we live from the Pantages?
Yeah, now we're live from the Pantages. Yeah, super good. Let's see those audio levels. So did you hear about this? There's a Amazon worker that was found dead in the bathroom in that tornado.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's what happens when you take bathroom breaks at Amazon. Hey, oh, okay. So here we are. It's a gallon of chicken. That's what this is. This is a Spider-Man episode.
Were you implying that they like create a tornado to kill you in the bathroom?
That is what I was implying. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, no, I like that. It's like,
I mean, he got hundreds of billions of dollars. It's like you can create
yeah, like
anything,
someone goes
probably.
into the bathroom and you just
Yeah.
hear like sirens going
Yeah.
off.
Yeah.
The weather,
Powered the weather
the
machine. Yeah.
extreme weather sirens.
Yeah.
Everyone prays for cover. Someone's trying to take a shit.
Yeah, so we watched Spider-Man and then we watched him backwards. I don't know why we did that,
We
but
watched the Spider-Mans, yeah.
yeah, I don't know why we did it backwards, but I'm fine with that because the best one is in the
So
middle anyway.
so we I proposed watching them backwards because I hadn't seen the third one since I saw it in the theaters, and
Hmm.
I didn't want to just like watch the first two and then like feel like we could just not watch the third one because we know it's bad and just like not be incentivized. Because like I did want to rewatch it, so
Yeah.
I proposed that we watch it first, and then we watch the first, and then we watch the second, and then you're just like, fuck it, let's just watch it in reverse so we can watch the second one after,
Yeah. I
so
think
we wouldn't
the
have to wait all the way to the end.
The
And
second
that was
one
a
is
good
my
way to go.
favorite one for sure. But
Yeah,
yeah, so
I thought
go
the reverse order was a good way to experience it.
yeah, I
Just because
think
I've seen
the
the first one a bunch of times.
right, and if I had finished the first one and then I mean I watched the first one just now and then I kind of want to watch the second one again. But I wouldn't have gotten to the end of the second one and have wanted to watch the third one cuz I know what happens in that movie. So yeah, I guess the first one we can talk about is Spider-Man 2002, which is what you have to type in Google to find out anything about it because there's just so much Spider-Man shit, you know.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, 20 years into the future.
yeah, it's really
It's
good
like a
though.
million Spider-Man movies.
Yeah, it's hard to
Um,
believe that one's 20 years old. There are some things that look dated, like the way the city looks. There's no homeless people in this movie, and that's strange because in a major urban
um,
area like that, I mean, homeless people are an epidemic, and you'd see more of that. Um,
yeah, I like this movie a lot. I think I was saying before we went on the stream that like this movie's super solid. It doesn't have a lot of like crazy highs, but it like never drops below like a certain level either. It like is really it's really interesting and entertaining throughout, and like the emotional parts are good and the action is good and it's like funny because of like the campiness and stuff. It's really just banging on all cylinders throughout the movie, and it's just a really good like solid flick. And I really like Sam Raimi's touch on all these movies. Like
yeah,
you
I
really
think
notice now that we've seen all of them, it's like you really notice like his direction style and influence on them, and like he really makes them immersive, and
they're
he
immersive,
strikes
but
a
they're
good
not too like serious. They don't take
yeah.
themselves too seriously. It's still
They're,
like campy in that Sam
I,
Raimi way.
Yeah, I feel like they're immersive because of the way that he like shoots shots. Like I was thinking about it like in this one when they get to the scene where they're in Jameson's office and you know, it's like hectic and you can see the girl like out the window and she's like trying to get him to like pick up the phone, and then the one guy's like there's a we double booked page 6, and then the other guy's like, what are we doing about Spider-Man? He's like selling all the copies, and Jameson's like trying to find the picture, and the way that it's like the camera shots are changing to show like who's talking, like the environment feels like really dynamic,
Hmm.
and And it just feels like a scene that would like only happen in this movie and like in this world, and it's like a feeling that the whole movie has, and you like can't shake it. So I like that a lot. Like you really feel like as soon as the movie starts, you really feel like you're at home in it, and it never really strays far from that feeling, and that it's like really present throughout, and just conveys everything in like a great way. Like really helps everything be couched like a so that you take it the way that it's intended.
Yeah, yeah, I definitely think that it's a solid movie. Like even when it came out, it was solid, and it still holds up today.
Yeah, I would agree with that as well.
I remember, and I still kind of feel this way. Like in comparison to Spider-Man 2, this movie's a lot more slow, and it's an origin movie, so it makes sense that that's the case. I can do without all the high school shit, but there isn't too much high school shit in this movie. Like
It's
they
over pretty
graduate
fast.
like halfway through the movie. So
I'd say it's earlier than that. The high school stuff is over and done with pretty quick.
yeah, there's really only one scene where they're in high school, but it's like yeah, maybe it's like an hour in when they graduate.
Um, what was I gonna say? Oh, so like I agree kind to like he's not like Spider-Man like in the suit swinging from the buildings and stuff just yet, but like he is doing things under the guise of Spider-Man, like doing the wrestling thing. And what I find is that like the character of Peter Parker and like all the narrative stuff done around him is really interesting. So like it doesn't even matter a lot of the times that he's not Spider-Man. Because you're just interested in in who he is and like what he's doing and what's happening to him and like how he's adjusting to it.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
I never really find myself bored, even though the things that are happening are not like directly related to like being Spider-Man or involving Spider-Man. So, I think that's something worth mentioning. I feel that way about the second movie as well because yeah, and I'd even say in like a lot of these movies, like he does spend a good amount of time just being like Peter Parker and like struggling. Like a lot of him is like Peter Parker out of the suit, struggling with like what his life is when he's in the suit. And yeah, all the stories that they tell for the most part are very interesting. So watching him like struggle with that and try and figure out like where where he's at on that trajectory is really interesting. Um, as faulty as the third movie is, like the Peter Parker stuff, um, I think is really interesting in it. I feel like it's all the other shit that really um, is kind of aimless. But even in the third movie, I like the trajectory. I like his arc when he like gets the black suit and then like gets rid of it.
Yeah, that's definitely the advantage of having a main character who's like his alter ego. That's not the superhero. He's just like a regular person. He's not like a super
Mm.
rich guy. He's not like a crazy science guy. He's just like a guy.
Yeah.
So you can have like regular people problems, and it's like, oh yeah, that's how you would deal with that, I guess, if you were Spider Man.
Hmm.
So yeah, in contrast to like the way that Bruce Wayne is, it's kind of like I don't know. It's like he's in a board meeting, and then he's like trying to acquire like a company in China, and or there's
Yeah,
the
where
one where he's like someone like puts all his stocks in futures, or I don't even know what that means.
yeah.
So
Yeah, whereas
it's
opposed to Spider-Man, there's some like really wholesome moments. Like I don't remember if it's the second movie or the third movie where he's like trying to propose to MJ in the restaurant and he's like
yeah,
talking to the maitre d and like trying to get him to bring the champagne out and he like wants her to like find it in the bottom of her glass and then she like leaves before that happens and so you see him kind of like face that disappointment and yeah, it's a totally different experience than yeah when you're dealing with someone like Bruce Wayne who it's like their day-to-day life is like so alien compared to what we experience
yeah,
as regular people. So, yeah, Spider-Man's got a lot going for him.
yeah,
Um
absolutely. And this, especially compared to like some of the other kind of Marvel properties that were around this time. Even like Fantastic Four. I mean, there's nothing really relatable or
Those movies were never
interesting
really good.
about what?
Yeah, those movies were never really good.
Yeah, there's nothing really relatable or interesting about Reed Richards.
Yeah,
Um, I guess you could make the argument that Johnny Johnny Blaze is pretty cool, but is it Johnny Blaze? Is that his name? No, it's something
I
else.
think
But
so, something like that.
whatever. Uh, yeah, he does cool stuff, but even that's not like super relatable. It's like, oh man, he's snowboarding in this one, and now he's doing like a what does he do? He does like a motorcycle stunt over like some cars or some shit.
I have no idea.
Those movies, there's a
What
lot
are
of
we talking
flash
about?
in those movies. Fantastic and the Furious, fantastic.
Oh, Harry Potter and the Fantastic Furious
Yeah,
Beasts.
the Fantastic Four and where to find them.
It's
Yeah,
the
so
worst
Spider-Man
mashup.
1. Spider-Man 1, really solid movie. I also think Willem Dafoe is probably one of the coolest villains in like
Yeah,
his
we haven't
Marvel
mentioned Willem
movies.
Dafoe. He's really fun.
Yeah, he's
He's
like
really great
super
in this.
sinister. Yeah.
Yeah, I like him a lot. I like Green Goblin in this. Um, way more than I thought I ever would. Um, in fact, like I think the cast for like I like Tobey Maguire a lot as Spider-Man in these. He's not anything like amazing. It's not like the greatest performance I've ever seen in my life or anything like that. But he just like is a good portrayal. Like I just believe he's Peter Parker.
Yeah.
I'm like, I can see this guy. This guy looks like the kind of guy that he's like unassuming. He's like smart, but a little introverted, keeps to himself. That like 90s, early 2000s kind of introverted, not the weird shit that we have now where people are like, oh, I like pandemics. But just like regular kind of introverted compared to like your normal person. And
No.
then,
I was
like too
already
shy to
living
talk to the
like this.
girl.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then just gets like these powers and he doesn't have his like biological parents, so the relationship that he has with his surrogate, aunt and uncle parents has kind of like a different dynamic. And yeah, this movie like just does a really great job like sticking the landing with the Ben thing. Like, have we only gotten Uncle Ben
Well, he's
twice? Do we get it in the
yeah.
Amazing Spider-Man, or is it
Yeah,
just
he's in
implied
the
in this
Amazing
as well?
Spider-Man. It's Martin Sheen.
Okay, I haven't seen that one again. I think I've only seen those Spider-Man movies once each.
Those are awful. Yeah. So
Yeah,
much worse
but
than these.
this one's really great. Like I actually really liked rewatching that scene. It's a great scene from the guy that's acting as Uncle Ben, and he just has like he's just trying to tell Peter that like you're becoming an adult and things are changing. And you want to make sure you change into the right guy. And I like that Peter like doesn't want to hear it, and he just doesn't feel like being lectured, and doesn't like the idea that this guy's like trying to be his dad when that's not his place. And then like when he finds him dead, later it's just like, oh my god, it's like a great moment for Peter where he was like, oh my god, I was so wrong, and I like didn't realize I had this thing that I did. And it really helps cement his bitterness and regretfulness about not stopping that guy, which kind of indirectly leads to Uncle Ben's death. It's just all really good. It's just good shit, and it lands really well.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just a really, really solid story. This is just like a great, great fucking movie.
Yeah. It's
It's
a
just,
great movie, yeah.
it's really, really good.
Even like the
And then,
relationship between Harry Osborn and Norman Osborn, I think, is really well done.
yeah, it's
In a
fine.
way
There's not a
that
ton of
is
it in the movie,
lacking
but it's
from
it's
the
good.
Amazing Spider-Man 2. Uh,
Yeah, where he's like
yeah.
just behind a shower curtain, and then he sees him, and like
Yeah.
and there's like a there's like a big machine that's like, oh man, only people that are dying have machines like this next to them.
Oh, right. Yeah. And that's just to introduce the Hobgoblin. I guess Harry Osborn is Hobgoblin. Um, but yeah, that's really dumb. I could go on for days about how terrible the Amazing Spider-Man movies are. I honestly don't see anything redeeming about them. No, I can't say that. I do like.
Gwen Stacy.
Yeah, Gwen Stacy's pretty great. Uh, if given the choice, though, I like the Gwen Stacy from Spider-Man 3 a little more, but she's like less of a major character in that one.
Yeah.
So I don't know. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. So yeah, we're not talking about those. We're talking about Spider-Man. Spider-Man's. It's just called Spider-Man. That's the first movie.
We should do Spider-Man 2 now, because
Have we said all that we need to say about Spider-Man 1?
I mean, we're just gushing about it.
Yeah, I like the ending
Is there
scene
more
as
to
well.
gush about?
Yeah, there's.
Yeah,
I
like the
feel like
ending
we're gonna
scene as
have the
well.
most content about Spider-Man 3. But anyway, yeah, I like the last scene when he
Maybe.
fights Goblin, because Goblin is like really strong actually, and he has like a lot of cool
Yeah.
gadgets and stuff. It's like a really good challenge for Spider-Man.
Yeah, and like you said, he's like really sinister. He's ruthless, and he's
Yeah.
murderous. He's really a shoot first and ask questions later kind of guy. And
Yeah.
I liked as well that he was like he wasn't interested in like killing Spider-Man outright. Like there's like the one scene where he's like arguing with the Goblin, and he's like, "You don't go for the mind, and you don't go for the body, you go for the heart." And he's like, "Hurt Spider-Man," and then he's like, "Make him wish he was dead." And then before that, he wants to try and like coerce Spider-Man to being evil. And
Yeah.
it's just like, oh, this is like really cool shit, like dynamic villain motives that like we don't see very often. And that was like fun to see them interact in like all their different scenes, and for Goblin to be like formidable, because like there is the scene where he like gasses him, and then he like has him at his mercy, and it's like, okay, well, this is technically like he even says it, he's like, I could crush you like a bug right now.
Yeah.
And yeah, and they have like a couple good little like spits and spats throughout the movie. The balcony scene, the building that's on fire, and then the very end where he is holding the trolley and Mary Jane,
Yeah.
and that's a cool scene.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's really great.
Yeah. Okay, so after Spider-Man, there's the sequel to Spider-Man is called Spider-Man 2, which is a
Spider
fitting.
Dash Man.
Yeah,
2.
Spider hyphen man. It's not
Yeah.
spider. It's not one word. Spider. Spider-Man. So yeah, so Spider-Man 2. That's definitely my favorite Spider-Man movie. One thing is
Yeah,
like
this is
I
a
never
great
understood
sequel.
like what does Doc Ock want to do? Like what's his motivation for like he wants to like make like a bigger energy reactor, but like for what?
So
though?
there's like this scene where after he kills everyone in the hospital that's working on him, he like escapes, and then he realizes like, oh, it failed, and that Spider-Man showed up, and he realizes like everyone's dead, and at that point he also realizes, I think, that the inhibitor chip on the tentacles is broken,
Yeah.
and I think that the tentacles coerce him into remaking the reactor. I think it's a little bit of that. And he's like, oh, my calculations were wrong, but then he's like, no, it's not that, because like it was working, right? He's like, oh, it was working. It just needed more. It needed more.
Yeah,
And
we
then he's like,
needed
so
a
I need to
bigger
make a
explosion. I need to make something
so
that can destroy the city instead.
yeah. So I think that it's kind of like he like lost everything, and then the only thing he has left is like, well, I couldn't have been a bad scientist, right? The only thing I have left is that I'm a good scientist, and so I think then he's like, yeah, that's all. I had to prove them wrong, that like I knew what I was. I think it's kind of like that, where he just becomes like deranged mad scientist,
Okay.
something along those lines.
And then so he's like
Um,
trying to get the precious tritium in order to make a
Oh,
bigger thing.
let me remark on this, because like when we did watch Spider-Man 2, there was like a period of time where you like left, and I was like talking to myself
Hmm.
for most of it. So there was like the part where he like finds the like broken down, like half sunken building, and then he like goes inside, and he's like, here's where I'm gonna do it. And then I'm like sitting there, and I'm like, yeah, doesn't he like build I'm like, this guy in like the year like 2004, when there's like no Amazon, there's like no global supply chain,
Yeah.
he's gonna get a bunch of fucking high-tech science shit delivered to a building that has no address. That's like It's like half
Like half
underwater.
underwater, yeah.
He's gonna like assemble like the
Yeah.
Hadron Collider
No,
in the middle of
nobody's gonna
the
ask any
ocean.
questions, yeah.
Yeah, with no
Yeah.
Amazon 2-day delivery. He's gonna have this fucking shit delivered and made before this fucking movie's over.
Yeah.
This building's in international waters, but it's still somehow off the coast of New York. I just thought that shit was hilarious.
Yeah.
But it's like, okay. Um,
Yeah, I'll have to
and
suspend my
and
disbelief on
this,
that, I guess.
yeah, this movie definitely has a couple more areas of like you kind of have to suspend your disbelief and like realize that this is like a comic book movie, and that if you pretended that you were like reading this movie in a comic book in your hand rather than like watching it on your TV, like this is the kind of shit that you could expect to be on the pages and you'd be like okay with. That's
Yeah.
kind of something I think is like important to remember sometimes when you're like watching comic book movies, is that like even though you're watching a movie, the tone is kind of being set by like a comic book. So there's a lot of that in this movie. I feel like this one has that a little bit more than one, but this one's just this one's also the superior sequel. Just in what is it about this one that's like so good? Is it just from what I remember, it's just like every scene feels really interesting and
Yeah,
fun
for one
in
thing,
terms
like
of like what you're seeing
there's
Spider-Man
way
deal
more
with.
action, and there's the writing is really good, and the conflicts that are happening, because like in Peter Parker's life, he's kind of like
He's dealing
trying to
with
get with
MJ.
Mary Jane because he likes her a
Yeah.
lot, but she's also like he told her at the end of the last movie that he can't really do anything, and he's like accepting that too. It's like I can't be Spider-Man and like have all the shit that Peter Parker wants too.
Mhm.
And then on top of that, he's like losing his powers because he's so conflicted.
Yeah.
Uh, and then there's he also has a personal relationship with Doctor Octopus, like he knows him
Yeah.
personally. And then then there's Harry Osborn, who like is motivated by like just the hatred of Spider-Man, not knowing that it's Peter Parker, and he's like helping Octavius to get like the precious tritium,
Yeah.
and then
Aunt May has some like great scenes in this movie where she kind of helps get Peter back on track when he starts losing focus on like what he really wants.
yeah.
I really feel like the scene between him and her when she's like packing at the house I think that's like one of the best scenes in the movie actually.
Yeah, I mean, I
Um,
like the part when he like is Spider-Man, but that's cool too.
Yeah,
Uh,
I feel like all the Spider-Man scenes are like really high, and like that's like
yeah,
one of the scenes that's like outside of those things, and it's like, oh, this is just like you can actually get some like good quality like character stuff, from the characters when they're not doing the superhero thing, and like, in the scene, it's like Aunt May is, I think they like took her house, and so she's like trying to sell a bunch of shit, and Peter Parker's there, and he hasn't been around for a while and Spider-Man's been gone for a while at this point, and Aunt May is talking to Peter about it because the little kid that's there as well, their neighbor, is like, oh, he misses Spider-Man, and Aunt May says that he knows that Spider-Man is a hero, and that there are people out there that have to make sacrifices, and that they have to be the example for everybody else to know what the right thing to do is. And it's just a really great scene where it's another one of those scenes where you almost feel like Aunt May must know that Peter Parker is Spider-Man, because it's almost like she's telling him and Spider-Man what they exactly like need to hear,
yeah,
even though she's specifically just talking to Peter. And yeah, it's just a really like heartwarming scene. I got like a little choked up when it was going on. It was just like a really great like, oh, it's so nice to have like people that love you that you can like fall back on, and that tell you like great things like this that are really supportive and uplifting. And it's like where the third act like takes off and Peter really turns things around, and it's really cool.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. So just to see Peter try to struggle, like keeping all the pieces together of like his personal life and like trying to be Spider-Man as well, and like
Yeah.
trying to live in an apartment and and having a job and going to college, like juggling all those things of being Spider-Man at the same time, and then trying to like
Mm.
go out of his way to like be there for Mary Jane, but he every time he tries that, he doesn't work
Yeah,
out
because
because
this
he has
is
to Spider-Man has to take over. So
yeah, because this is the one where in the beginning he's like trying to deliver the pizzas and he's
right,
late. And then yeah, he's trying to go to like see Mary Jane's play, but then like he gets like rear-ended by some
some
guys
criminals,
that like
yeah,
rob a thing or something like that, and then he has to stop to be Spider-Man and help them, and so he's late, and
yeah,
so yeah, his like life kind of starts falling apart a little bit in terms of like he disappoints Mary Jane, which he was like really he didn't want to do, he said he wouldn't do, and ends up doing it anyways.
yeah,
Um, and then then like I think the Doc Ock stuff starts happening, and then he like robs the bank or whatever, and then we get kind of like our first really big action scene with like Spider-Man. Well, like you get a little bit of that like before the like when he does get rear-ended on the motorcycle, he does some Spider-Man stuff where he's like on top of like some cars. It's like a car chase scene,
yeah.
which is pretty fine from what I don't remember it too strongly.
I think
But
it's
the
that's
next
part of it is the car chase scene. That's how it starts,
yeah,
right? Yeah.
yeah. I don't remember too much of it though. I was gonna say the next scene after that though is when Doc Ock goes to like rob the bank,
Uh-huh.
and then they do, like, yeah. So let's talk about some of these like good action scenes. Is like they do the first of the series where they're like falling through the air and like fighting in midair, and it is really cool.
Yeah.
I like it a lot. And Doc Ock looks really cool, like climbing up the building walls, and the fact that him and Spider-Man are like fighting like off the ground on the side of buildings is also really cool. And like the scope of these fights is just really cool because of that dynamic between Spider-Man and Ock and how they like go up like really high and they're not like fighting on the ground and stuff.
Yeah, great camera work on that.
Then
So
the
yeah,
really cool scene after that is the
the
train.
ending.
Unless you want to say any
Oh
more
yeah, the
about the
train
building.
scene. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
like that. It's a really long fight, and it like leads to the train
it's
scene,
really
right?
long.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So he like pursues. He's like pursuing Doctor Octopus, and then yeah, then Ock goes on the train,
Hmm.
and um, that that is just like a really cool fight where they're like holding their own, but then Doctor Octopus shows that he's like cunning. He like knows how to play the villain. He knows how to like use Spider-Man's um, like he's like a guardian of the community, so he knows how to use that against him, and he like sabotages the brakes on the train, so it's gonna like go off the rails and endanger everybody on it. And then Spider-Man has to do this crazy thing where he like webs all the buildings and like stops it with his body, and it's like really intense.
Oh yeah, that's really really
And
good. Yeah.
yeah, and his like mask is like come off, and then he like passes out or whatever, and all the people like shepherd him like throughout the train and protect him, and then they let him know that they're not gonna like betray him or anything, like betray his identity, which is just really cool scene. And there's like all these movies, because like the first movie has it when the citizens are on the bridge and they're like fighting Green Goblin, and they like it's a lot of like New York pride, and this movie has that feeling again too. um which is kind of interesting, I feel like, because like even as someone that's like not from New York is very like emblematic of like America, I feel. So these scenes feel very like American. You feel very like proud, like, oh yeah, this is totally something that would like happen in our country with like American superheroes or something like that. It's very cool. It's like a
Yeah.
way to make the audience feel like a hero, even though we're not the main character.
Yeah. Okay.
So
So at the end, for some reason, Doctor Octopus takes Mary Jane to like he chains her up to the machine
yeah,
or something for some reason. But it's really caught up in the whole spectacle of it. I don't really think too much about that. But now that I
well,
think
doesn't
about
he
it, I'm
take
like, what
Mary
does he
Jane?
accomplish by doing that?
Doesn't he take Mary Jane as leverage over both Peter and Harry?
He doesn't
Because
know
like,
that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. He
okay,
never
I wasn't
finds
sure
out.
yet, but I feel like he takes her as like leverage against Harry a little bit as well. I'm not exactly sure. I don't remember.
Yeah, I can't remember what the reason was for that.
No, doesn't he like okay, so like he's in the cafe with Mary Jane and like throws the car and then Peter like spider senses and then they get out of the way and then because Peter's the guy that takes pictures of Spider-Man, so he's like, oh, I know you know where Spider-Man is, and then doesn't he take Mary Jane to like
Oh
incentivize
yeah, I
Peter to
think
follow
that's what it
through?
is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. So then he makes the machine to turn it on, I guess. So that's just to prove to everybody that he could actually do the science machine, I guess.
Well, we still don't ever get a scene on whether or not it's like successful. Because like as soon as he turns it on, Spider-Man starts fucking with them, and it starts like shooting out of the boundaries and ripping things apart again. So it looks like it's just doing whatever it's gonna do.
Yeah.
Who knows? Because I think it basically just becomes like an infinite. It needs to like constantly feed. It's like infinitely entropic. I think so. Like, I think that's the main problem about it. Um, but yeah, that so like the train scene is really like the climactic fight between like Doctor Octopus and Spider-Man because like after that they don't really fight. The spectacle is more from just like the drama between Peter and Ock and Mary Jane in that building as it's like crumbling and they're dealing with the sun. But it's all pretty cool. Um,
Yeah, definitely.
and Spider-Man feels very like heroic, and you get a good idea of like how strong he is because there's like one part where he's like holding up like all of the building. Um, and yeah, uh, this is just a really great sequel to that first movie. That first movie just lays down this like really great foundation and base for Spider-Man and like what you can expect from like Sam Raimi, and then they come in the second movie with a better and more iconic villain, and they dial the movie up, all the way, and they really just win with like every scene that's in this movie. I don't really remember there being any like super bad um things in terms of like plot or like the scenes getting wasted or anything like that. And that scene where he throws the car at Peter and Mary Jane in the cafe, that is another scene of like you gotta this is like a comic book movie shit because like that is definitely a
Wait, what
scene where
scene
it's
is it?
like the scene where like Peter and Mary Jane are in the cafe and then Doctor Octopus throws like a fucking car through the window and it's
Oh
like
yeah,
they live because he happens to be Spider-Man and he has spider sense. So it's like, what were
yeah.
you thinking? You were just gonna throw a fucking car and kill the people that you need to like
You get Spider-Man
get
involved. Yeah,
Spider-Man? Yeah.
yeah.
So, um, they like those are kind of like the only little like things about the movie though, where it's like does that destroy the movie? It's like well technically you could rewrite it so he doesn't do something so like lethal, right? And then the scene would be fine. But instead we get the really lethal version, and so the scene's like a little wonky. But it's like one of those things where it's like it's one of these like fantastical kind of movies where like shit like that's gonna happen. It's a comic book movie, so you just kind of like let it slide. Because like before that even happens, loud noises like Jurassic Park, like when the T-Rex is about to come, and like that's one thing that they do with Doctor Octopus in this movie is like you can kind of hear him like coming because he's like the claws are like slamming into the concrete. So that's how it like starts. It's like I think they like throw he hears like the stomping and then the car comes through the window and then it like goes to an exterior shot of the cafe and you hear the stomping again
Yeah,
and
it
then like
goes
Doctor
like
Octopus
slow
kind of
mo.
like
Yeah.
yeah, and then he kind of like shows up. Um so yeah, there's some things about the movie that are kind of like silly like that and you could consider them like nitpicks or like kind of errors or whatever, but I think for the most part because they don't like destroy like the fabric of the movie or the rules of the world or anything like that. I think for the most part it's fine.
So yeah, so
While
that's
another
Spider-Man
noticeable
2.
like
Really great,
problematic.
really great
Yeah,
film.
Spider-Man 2
But the best
is
one of the
fucking great.
trilogy, in my opinion. So
Yeah,
Spider-Man
and
3.
we were thinking about this like when we were watching it about like trilogies that have like it seems rare that you get trilogies that have like good first movies and then better second movies. Um, but funnily enough, when that does happen, you usually always get a really terrible third movie. And I was trying to think of other franchises that have done this, and one that we didn't discuss was Pirates of the Caribbean. I feel like Pirates of the Caribbean has like a really good first movie, a better second movie, and then the third movie just takes a giant shit.
Yeah, I think
And
I think my favorite one is the second one of Pirates of the Caribbean as well, just because there's like way
yeah,
more action in it.
it's just a super cool movie.
Like the first one is
Um,
cool, but it's also like really slow.
yeah, it's the same as this, where it's like it's really it's just well made. It like satisfies the premise and like builds the world up really nicely, and all the characters are really strong, and you're just like left with like, oh man, this is a really cool world, and these are cool characters that had like a fun adventure in it, and I'd like to see more of that. And then they make the second movie, and they're like, oh, we're gonna really like get into our groove and do all this cool stuff with like what we're feeling, and it's just it ends up being really really cool, and they really step into the lore and like introduce like all the Davy Jones stuff, which is cool.
Yeah,
And
Davy
then the
Jones is
third
really
movie
cool. Yeah.
yeah, and then the third movie falls off a cliff, and then like same thing happens in like the Dark Knight trilogy, where like Batman Begins is really good, really solid. Like you're just like, oh man, I want to see these characters in this world again. And they're like, okay, well step up. We've got the second movie, and it like takes all the characters and like dials them up, and it dials up the plot, and you're like, oh god, this is amazing. How are you gonna follow this up? And they're like, with something terrible that's gonna make you question why you put any faith in us at all in the first place.
Yeah.
You're like, and you're just like, oh no, as you get Dead Man's Chest and The Dark Knight Rises and Spider-Man 3.
Yeah, Dark Knight
um,
Rises is another disappointment. But yeah, Spider-Man 3. It starts off. What happens at the beginning? What's the first scene? Uh,
I feel like he's living life being Spider-Man. I want to say that he kind of like. Well, I know that I know that 17 minutes in he has a fight with Harry the Goblin, and it's really cool. They're like flying through like an alleyway,
oh yeah, that
but
was
they're
like
like
15
in the
minutes in. Yeah.
yeah, and they're like in the air, so they're like fighting by the windows and like the fire escapes, and they're like throwing bombs at each other and stuff. It's actually a pretty fucking cool scene. The action in Spider-Man 3 is top notch in my opinion. It's actually like the strongest part of the movie.
Yeah. I
Um,
mean,
they're
you
just
know, you
none
can
of the
say that about a
connective
lot of
tissue.
movies. Yeah, that doesn't
Yeah,
make a
just
movie
none of the
great.
connective tissue is great. No, I know, but it's
Yeah.
one of the things that you can like take away and be like, well, at least there was that.
Yeah,
'Cause
at least we
I
got to
was
see Spider-Man
I was
doing this
really
stuff.
satisfied by the
Yeah.
action scenes in this movie, like especially the scene after, or like I think it's the next action scene where like Gwen Stacy like falls out of the building. The building's like
Oh
getting
yeah,
exploded.
yeah. Or the
That
crane.
scene is
Yeah.
really fucking cool, also. Um, and I really like this scene at the end where he fights Venom and they're like falling through the sky again. I thought that was really cool. So I have good things to say about the action in this movie. It's just a
Oh
fucking
yeah,
shit.
so yeah, we didn't talk about when Harry hits his head really hard and he loses his memory. He has the
Yeah,
amnesia sitcom
that's how
storyline,
that's
and
how the
then he hit it? Does he hit his head again to like recover his memory? Because that's what would happen in like Full
no,
House
I
or
think he
whatever.
just learn. I think he just remembers over time that he hates Spider-Man.
Oh, okay.
Um, so okay, so this is the second. Watching this was the second time I'd ever seen this movie. So I feel like, well, I know because we've talked about it. I think twice. I have more to say about this movie than I
Oh
used to
yeah,
just say
that
like, oh
emo
man, Spider-Man.
montage. That was I actually like
Yeah,
that. I think that's pretty funny because I mean it's like
I think it's good.
sarcastic, right? It's like when
Yeah,
he's walking down the street finger gunning like all the people on the street and nobody
yeah,
gives him like a good response. Everybody's weirded out
no,
because of this guy.
Hmm.
So I mean, I think it's just like a comedy thing. It was out of place, and it was strange that he was wearing eyeliner in the in the scene,
Um,
and he looked in the mirror, and then he put the hair over his face, like
yeah, that
straight
was
up
the only
emo shit.
thing. That was the only thing that I thought was like really, really silly. Other than
Yeah,
that, I thought I really like the black suit arc. I think that it's all done really well. It's just in a really shitty movie. It's like all the other stuff about this movie I don't really like. I don't
that
like the
was a nice
inclusion of
suit that he was
Sandman.
wearing.
Huh?
That was a nice suit that he was wearing in that part.
Yeah.
The black suit,
Yeah,
yeah.
I like all the things that they show him do it because like the black suit makes him like drunk on power, so he becomes like really arrogant and really um, offensive, and that so like everything like kind of makes sense. He's never felt like this like because he's losing all his like support groups right in this movie. He like his relationship with Mary Jane is like deteriorating. His relationship with Harry is completely gone. I don't know where he stands with Aunt May in this one. Is it the second movie that he tells her that Uncle Ben's was his fault, or is it this movie? Because like this is the one where
This is the one where he
the
tells Aunt May that he kills the other guy.
yeah,
Because
okay,
he
yeah.
puts a
So
black
like
suit on, and then he thinks he kills Sandman. So
yeah,
he's like, yeah,
yeah.
Spider-Man killed that
So
guy.
so his like relationship with Aunt May is starting to like deteriorate as well because she doesn't know. And yeah, so like I like the idea that he's getting empowered through this like more nefarious kind of means, and so he's getting like the the when you have great power but you're not being responsible at all. And I like it. It's really good, and also it's like all the things that Peter does. It's like this is what you would expect like an evil quote unquote Peter Parker to do. It's like he's gonna go out and like be socially aggressive, but like mostly benign stuff. Like you wouldn't expect him
Yeah,
to go out there and like murder, which I think is good that they don't make him do. And I like that the crescendo of that is that he goes to like where Mary Jane works and he like humiliates her. And
yeah,
then on top of like humiliating her, he like involves Gwen Stacy in it, and then he really starts like he kind of just starts riding the wave of like what he just did, and it starts devolving into the restaurant, and then he like has to start fighting people, and then Mary Jane like comes up to him and he like hits Mary Jane, and then like that is like the
that's
line
right.
that
Yeah,
gets
he
crossed
realizes.
that
Yeah, he needs to get rid
yeah,
of
where
it.
he like
Yeah,
knows he has to take off the suit, and I was just like that was great because like you're like where is he gonna, it's like if he's doing shit like this, which is like he's so disrespectful to Mary Jane in this scene, you're like where is it gonna happen, and it's like when he like becomes like physically uh he like physically endangers her, it's like where it like knocks him out of it, and I thought that was like really great. I thought it didn't like push the envelope too far. I felt like it was really faithful to like this depiction of Peter and like how we all want to like view Peter, and I thought that was cool, and I liked the scene too where he was like beating the suit. It was like pretty cool. Like there's like one part where he's got his like arms out and they're like curled up and he's like ripping it off and it's like tentacling out and it's all wiggly and it's very like Sam Raimi
yeah.
feeling, and I
It's
like
like
that a lot.
body
It's just
horror. Yeah,
yeah, it's really cool. I was like, oh, I'm so sad that this is in this movie because like, oh, this is really good. And I'm like, God, if they had just cut all the Sandman shit and just put in more Eddie Brock and like more Venom stuff, I just feel like God, the movie would be really, really solid. But it's really bloated and suffers because of that. Because like Sandman is like a non-character in this movie. He's in like every scene, but he never does anything like um, he never does anything meaningful. He never like doles out like a major defeat to Peter, from what I remember, or anything like
yeah.
that. he's just kind of in every scene, like just also being a villain when like other stuff. Like I think
He
the
kind
only
of
scene that
beats Spider-Man that first time that he encounters him. He like hits him really hard with like the sand hammer arm thing
yeah, but
on
doesn't
the
he just
truck.
kind of like go? But doesn't he just kind of like run away in like a big
Yeah, then he
sand
runs
cloud?
away. Yeah,
Yeah, so I feel like it's more like it's like okay, he punched through him. It's like he counters you because your punch goes through him, and then
right.
you
I
like
mean, I think the
escape.
real problem is trying to put Sandman in this in the first place. Is I mean, for
Yeah,
one thing,
that's
I don't think that he's a very cool villain to begin with, and for another thing, we already had Hobgoblin and Venom. They were introduced, I think, before Sandman was, or around the same time. Yeah,
I
because
think Eddie Brock gets introduced after Sandman.
yeah, but Venom gets introduced before that because he
Oh
like
yes, the
is the
symbiote. Yeah.
asteroid that comes to
Hmm.
Earth. Yeah,
Yes.
so that's like all before Sandman appears.
Yeah. No, that's the point that I'm trying to make is that like he literally has no purpose in this movie because he doesn't
Yeah,
challenge Spider-Man at all. Like the only scenes where Spider-Man and Sandman fight each other are that one where he runs away, and then the next one where where he kills him, or he like disintegrates him or whatever. He
yeah.
thinks
It
he
also
kills him.
seems like they set up a goal for Sandman, something about his family or something getting out of prison. I think his
Yeah,
daughter's like
it's
super sick, right? And he's trying to get like a medicine or something for
I
her.
don't know. It's all weak.
We don't really see him accomplish that goal, and we don't see Spider-Man defeat him because he kind of just
Well,
leaves
he like
after Venom
forgives him
gets
at the
killed.
end because it's becomes more
Oh,
about
because it's
Spider-Man.
about
It's
Ben,
it's more
Uncle
about
Ben.
Ben's
Yeah,
death, which is like, yeah, then why even give like Sandman like backstory and motivation at that point if you're just gonna use him for an arc for Peter to go through, then like he
right.
doesn't need backstory.
Yeah,
But like yeah, so he just is yeah, he's just a really tacked on part of the movie. He feels like the most tacked on.
I don't think his performance was bad. I just think that he didn't really need to
No,
be in
he's
this
just
movie.
the movie's just bloated.
Yeah,
And he's just one of the pounds that I'd want to shed if I was gonna do this over.
absolutely.
Um,
I don't even mind Hobgoblin as much. I think that's fine
yeah,
because they were kind of
he's
building toward that in the second movie, so it makes
yeah,
sense.
and it kind of feels like if you were gonna do like a proper trilogy where you're gonna resist the temptation to make a fourth and X amount of movies after three,
Hmm.
um, it makes sense that like you need to get the Harry story in at like the because like you didn't get it in the other movies, so it's got to be in the last movie, right? Where like Harry and Peter, are gonna have to face each other. Um, I mean, not that that's something like I am demanding personally, but like I guess like it's canonical to the comic book, so like you have to have it. I don't know, but yeah, so I feel like they felt obligated, and I don't. Yeah, I agree with you. I don't think that like the Hobgoblin story in this one is like completely shitty. It's mostly fine. It's really just the Sandman stuff. Like we needed less. Sandman just needs to be out of the movie, and then we need more Eddie Brock and like more Venom. Like we needed like some characterization to Venom, and then you could do like an actual good finale with like Spider-Man and Venom, and like have Venom be an actual like menacing villain where he's stronger, and then you do need Harry to come in and help Spider-Man and like do the sacrifice.
Yeah, I
And
mean, in
that
a
would
way,
be
I would say that Venom's not even really a character. We have like Eddie Brock using Venom, using the symbiote, but it's not really like Venom attacking Spider-Man. It's like Eddie Brock using the symbiote to attack Spider-Man, if that makes sense.
yeah. I think if you cut Sandman, you can fit giving characterization to the symbiote in your
Yeah, and I
movie
don't know what the symbiote's motivation would be for attacking Spider-Man.
because he rejected him because he was the his first host.
Okay. Um,
That's that's what they like what they establish in this movie. They just do it more visually
mhm.
uh or something. I don't remember like something when we watched it this time I was like, "Oh, that makes sense." I'm like, it makes sense that like Venom would give his power to Eddie Brock because they both want revenge against Spider-Man because Venom
I
just
always
got
thought it
abandoned
was
by
just
him.
because Eddie Brock happened to be in the same place when Spider-Man was getting rid of the symbiote.
Oh no, it's also because at that point like he's praying to God to kill Peter Parker.
Yeah.
So like he actually hates Peter Parker, and then Venom is being shed by Peter Parker. So Venom's being like rejected, and Eddie's already had his life destroyed. So they have a mutual interest, and that's like one of the things about Venom and Eddie Brock is that makes them a strong symbiotic relationship is that they have like mutual interest in the destruction of Spider-Man. So like I thought the movie
I
was doing a good
guess I
job
didn't
at like
really get that from the movie. The movie made it seem like he was just in the right place at the right time. There was like
I
no
mean
other
like why
human
is he in the
being there in
church?
the church.
Why yeah, but why is he there?
I don't know, because he wanted to pray to kill Spider-Man.
To kill Peter Parker.
Okay, yeah.
So that's motivation. It's not just coincidence.
No, not the coincidence why Eddie Brock was there. The coincidence is why the symbiote chose to go to Eddie Brock. It looked more
Well, that's
like
how
a
they wrote it.
coincidence.
That's how they wrote it in the movie, but like the fact that they end up having such a like a mutual cuz like as you can see when Eddie and the symbiote merge, the symbiote has a much different appearance and that's because they're
Yeah,
like more harmonic when they bind where when Spider-Man and the symbiote were together, Peter retains all the control.
yeah,
And so I told you like when we talked about this the first time that if they had made it that like slowly over time like Peter would have started hearing Venom
yeah,
in the black suit and then like that's kind of like the thing that like at the very end like more and more Venom's thoughts start to come in like that would give some characterization and then if we got like because the problem with this cut is the black shit goes on Eddie, and then he immediately goes to Sandman and strikes a bargain, and then we're immediately in the finale of the movie, and then they're fighting.
yeah. I
Whereas
mean, that would
if
have
you did
definitely
it,
been better if Venom was like a
yeah,
speaking character.
yeah, if we had gotten like 20 minutes of time with like Venom and Eddie Brock before he fights Spider-Man as Venom in the finale, I think that you could have done some like interesting stuff, but the
Yeah, I
movie's
mean,
got
I think in
Sandman
the
in it.
movie overall, wasn't even like supposed to be a character. I think it was just something that was used by another character to try and defeat Spider-Man in a way that like it's like
Yeah, that's
a Kryptonite is like not a character in Batman v Superman. It's just a
yeah,
thing
and
that
that's
Batman uses.
yeah, and I just feel like that's a shame that like you decide to treat Venom that way because like you can actually just make that a character.
Yeah, I think that's another thing is like maybe they were viewing Eddie Brock plus the symbiote equals Venom, when in reality it's like Eddie Brock and Venom
Yeah,
are like
plus
two
yeah,
people like merged into one,
yeah,
or
that's more
something
what
like
it's
that.
supposed to be like.
Yeah,
Yeah. Um. So
I don't know. Is Spider-Man
the
3 worse than Venom 2? That's up for debate.
no,
Yeah, I think Venom 2 is
Venom
probably the
Two
worst movie I watched this year. It's definitely up there.
Yeah, Venom Two is fucking horrible.
It's so bad. It was so
Oh my
terrible.
god, man, that movie is fucking awful. Uh, Jesus, it that movie feels like half of it feels like X-Men New Mutants and then the
I never
other
watched
half
that
of it
one.
I haven't either, but that movie felt like it. It was like dark and it was about like minorities with superpowers that are like cool
What?
but they're evil and it was in like dark prison or like like mental places for like half the movie or like jails. I was
Yeah.
like, dude, this feels like that. It's like they just like went to the set of that and like filmed half of a movie and then like did half of a movie with Tom Hardy and like Venom stuff on like a green screen set or something like that and they just stitched them together.
Yeah, I mean, there's a
Um,
lot going on with that movie, and none of it is good.
yeah.
I don't know. Maybe it's just like it's like legit made for like little kids. Because if you look at it with any kind of like adult perspective and like uh,
Yeah, they did
logic,
make it
it doesn't make
PG-13.
any sense. But
No,
if
it
you're like a
doesn't.
kid, you're just like, oh my gosh, all this
Yeah,
like
he's just there for the
explosions and the
ride.
red guy's fighting the Venom guy. That's cool.
He's a tornado.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, like, if you really just wanted, like, a lot of Venom and Carnage action, I think that this does it pretty well. And, well, it doesn't do it well, but it does it a lot, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And it has the odd couple thing with Eddie Brock and Venom that it does a lot. So yeah, again, I think that's just like made for kids. But yeah, that's definitely worse than Spider-Man 3 in
Yeah.
terms of like not necessarily its portrayal of Venom, but its like ability to like tell a coherent story.
Yes. Yes, the portrayal of Venom overall is better in the Venom movies. It's still not
Yeah,
great, but it's better.
it's not
But
perfect. Yeah,
it's it's in a pretty bad spot overall for the content. So, we're really only getting half. We're really only getting the visuals.
yeah. I really
And
think the most egregious, like when they did, it's like the audacity of them to have an after credit scene where they want to tie it into the Marvel movies. It's like, oh my god, dude. Especially after all the
yeah,
garbage that Marvel put out this year.
have have we done a have I done any of my Spider-Man predictions on the record yet? In any of the things that you've shown?
I
Should I
don't
do them in the
think
Spider-Man?
so.
Is it
Yeah, we can
is
do
it
that. Yeah,
appropriate
we'll
if I
just.
do them in the Spider-Man
These are
movie?
predictions. We haven't seen the movie yet. We don't know what's going to happen, so these are just
Yeah. So these are just
speculation.
two predictions I wanna put on the record for like
Okay.
what I think we can expect in the Spider-Man movie. So I think in the post credits, probably like the after movie credit, like the one at the very end of the movie, that you have to stay and you've seen the lights turn on when they
Yeah.
play it. I think we'll see Venom like get out of like the same. Like it looks like Doctor Octopus and the Green Goblin and shit. It looks like they come out of a hole. Like maybe that's not correct, but like I feel like we'll see a scene where like Venom will like crawl out of a hole and it'll
I
show
don't
that
think they're
he's
gonna
like
do that. I think so the very post credit scene is just gonna be like something comedic. It's not gonna set up any future movies or anything. But the mid credit scene, it's gonna set up some Doctor Strange multiverse stuff. It might even be like Doctor Strange saying
yeah.
like, "Oh, how did you get here?" And then it'll just cut off. You know, 'cause
Okay,
it could be
yeah.
anybody. That's what I think it's gonna be.
So I agree with you cuz it kind of ties into my next prediction and like I feel like they could do this inside they could reveal this inside the original runtime, but like I feel like the post credit scene for this movie or not post mid credit.
Yeah.
God, mid credit scene for this
All right.
movie will be the revelation that Doctor Strange in this movie was actually Loki who took a time stone from the TVA. That's my big prediction because
That's
like
a
so
big
far
deal.
from like
Yeah.
all the trailers and shit that we've seen, like Doctor Strange seems like he's pretty out of character. And that's the
Yeah.
thing that like I think that like if Marvel still has the writing chops that like we knew them to once have, I think that they would want to be trying to set up that like Loki is desperate to fight Kang, and so he needs to get the Avengers involved. And so like he's going to like he sees this opportunity where Peter is desperate and in need of somebody with like an Infinity Stone, and he's gonna use the time stone to do that with Peter and like get the attention of Kang or I don't know something like that, and that will like bring the Avengers in or something. That's what I think, and that's the only thing that I can see them doing really that like will rationalize Loki's behavior. Or I mean, Doctor Strange's behavior, unless they do some other weird thing. Like I've heard some people say he might be like Mephisto, which I think is like another Spider-Man villain that can like shapeshift or something. So
Oh.
but yeah, I think mid credit Loki reveal, post credit Venom reveal. I think that we're gonna get some like hard evidence in this movie that like they're gonna bring Venom into like the next Spider-Man adventure. I think that that's really where they want to go. I think that if Sony is smart, that's something that they would have been working with uh, Marvel the entire time to like get to, and it would be something I'd be interested in. I would say with like the caveats that like the people that are currently writing Venom like they need to stop. They need to give it to somebody else because they're doing a terrible job.
Yeah,
So if
so
we
I
can get
agree
the
with you on the
people,
Doctor Strange predict. I think that's pretty good prediction. I don't think that they're gonna even mention Venom in this movie, in the
okay,
Spider-Man
I could
movie.
see them
Yeah,
not,
because
but I
they're
feel
like
like
probably concerned with setting up like the next few Marvel movies that are already like coming out, like the Doctor Strange movie and there's like another one, right? There's other
Well, so like
ones.
typically
Thor. They're doing
the
Thor.
way that they structure their post movie scenes is that the mid credit scene usually ties the movie that you're watching to the next movie that they have planned,
Right.
and then the post credit scene is usually something that's fun about the movie
Right.
that you just saw that's like inconsequential.
Right.
Um,
That's why I'm thinking it'll
so
be just like pure comedy and it won't have Venom in it.
Oh, I think that's why it would be because it like it wouldn't be like because like the mid credit thing would tie it to like the greater Marvel plot which
Yeah.
is like involving Kang and all the time
Yeah.
shit and multiverse stuff, and then the last one would just be like, oh, this is like happening in like the Spider-Man universe. It doesn't have to do with like the I mean, like, I assume it would have to do with the next Spider-Man movie, I guess, but it's more of like, this is also something that happened in this movie. Like, tee hee, look, that's Venom. He's now in our universe. And like, okay, bye. It'll be something like that.
Maybe. I don't know.
That's how I feel.
Well, I
Because, like,
mean,
that's
we'll
what they
have to
did with
see.
Venom. Because that's
We'll
what
have
they
to
did
see
in
on
that movie.
Thursday. Yeah, but those are made by different people.
Yes, they are. So, yeah, I felt like it was very, it was,
Like, did the last Venom even
brazen.
have like a post credit scene?
Yeah, wasn't it that? Or
No,
was that the,
the first Venom. I mean,
oh, I think so.
eh, I don't remember. But if it
I
did, I
don't
think it
either.
was a comedy thing. I don't think it was like it set up the sequel. Actually, no, it did. Now that I remember, it 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 showed Carnage. It showed Woody Harrelson being like,
Oh yeah, you're right.
"There's gonna be Carnage," and uh, what movie was it where they had the prisoner guy from Spider-Man Far From Home or Spider-Man the first one, Homecoming, Spider-Man Homecoming? You remember the guy that was in jail at the end?
Scorpion.
Yeah, he's like, I want to kill Spider-Man too. And
Yeah.
then he showed up in like either the Venom 2 or he shows up in the
Yeah, you mentioned
upcoming
that.
Morbius
Suicide
movie.
Squad or something? Oh yeah, Morbius, yeah.
Yeah. And so does Vulture. I think it's Michael Keaton playing Vulture. So I don't know what they're going to do with that. It seems really strange. It's also strange that the Morbius movie has not come out yet because they made it like 2 years ago. I think they're still working on cutting Jared Leto out of the
Cheer that
movie
out of it,
completely.
yeah.
Yeah. They're still editing it. So,
So
yeah.
like every scene he's in, he like is in he's like sitting in a chair, but it's in like a shadowy part of the room, so you can't
Yeah.
see him because
Yeah.
he can't be exposed to like light and stuff.
I thought maybe they just do a deep fake and put like Dwayne Johnson or Chris Pratt over him.
Oh.
Anyway,
They
so
just
yeah, that's the Spider-Man trilogy. I was really excited about Spider-Man Far From Home or No Way Home. That's what it's called. Something Spider-Man
uh
Home, the third one.
yeah, the third one.
Really
The one
excited. Did
coming
you
out.
switch your tickets? I'm gonna go see it on Thursday. I'm seeing it on Thursday
I'm
at three
asking my
o'clock.
friend if he wants to see it on Thursday instead.
Yeah, so that's exciting. First
Because
showing.
if I do, if we do, I'll probably see it that night. I'll probably
Mm-hmm.
see it Thursday night. But I
Mm-hmm.
probably will not talk to you till after I've seen it either, because you'll probably be done around like 6,
Yeah,
and I'll be at the bowling alley by then. And
yeah.
then like we'll go see it after, and then I'll talk to you about it once I get home.
Right on.
So I'm looking at like an 8:45 showtime, and I was checking the seats earlier, and there's like only 2 tickets are taken already. So it's like the whole theater is. It's like a tiny theater, but like the whole thing's open still.
Oh, that's good. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's the Spider-Man Sam Raimi trilogy. Really great stuff. Maybe we'll come back and talk about Amazing Spider-Man, but probably not. Those are terrible.
Yeah. I don't. I don't remember those movies at all, so
They're
I kind
so
of feel
boring.
like. Yeah, I kind of feel like they're probably not worth going back
They're not.
to check out.
Anyway, that's it. Goodbye.
All right, see ya.